Well, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the interviews we have with the people of the Leader Campus. And we have now with us Beate Chelette. And I hope I'm getting that right?
You're
Beate
doing a
Chelette.
great job. Yes.
Thank you. Okay, well, you're, I think, the fourth now. So I'm gonna have to stop counting now because it's getting to be too many. But it's nice to have you here. I welcome you.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Good. First of all, how would you describe your own leadership style?
Oh, that's very good. Well, I actually describe my leadership style as a classic woman leadership style. Just to open the door to the discussion we are about to have.
Just go right to the center of it.
Go right to it, yeah.
Okay. So let me skip that. We'll get back to the balanced leadership and go right to, what do you think is the difference between women and men in their leadership style?
So, in the Women's Code, so I founded the Women's Code, and the Women's Code was founded with the intention that I realized that there's a lot about male leadership that we know, right? We know 10 leaders for sports. I think that all the Red Sox examples of baseball leadership is going to be replaced now with Astros and Dodgers baseball leadership examples in the ninth inning,
Yeah.
And so we understand that there are very specific things about male leadership that are being used, and we're able to recognize them. But I saw that when it comes to female leadership, the only thing we know about female leadership is that it's not this. So it's not like men. It's not aggressive. It's not submissive. It's not Hillary Clinton. It's not Sarah Palin. It's not Meg Whitman. It's not Sheryl Sandberg. It's not this. So when it comes to female leadership, we know everything it is not, but we actually don't know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
The Women's Code was designed with a purpose in mind to actually define what women leadership is. And so the difference is that men and women lead differently. And there are specific attributes each one of these styles have. And so that's what we're setting out to do, defining that.
So have you gotten very far in the definition? What kind, is there at least one or two or three things that you've discovered that are for women only, that seem to fit at women only?
Yes. So in the Women's Code, and I wrote a book called Happy Woman, Happy World, and there's a whole chapter on male versus female leadership. And so in the male leadership, men lead with PSP, power, strategy, and persuasion.
Okay.
Every man I know, they immediately go like, how do I get to a position of power? Who do I need to have a strategic alliance to get there?
Okay.
And who do I need to persuade to be on my team? So those are the fundamentals. I'm not even talking about decisiveness and all of that. I'm just talking about some of these very fundamental, it's almost like a fundamental idea of male leadership.
Okay.
When we come to women lead on cue. That's about compassion, uniqueness, and empowerment. Mm-hmm. And compassion is because many women are mothers. Mm-hmm. What we know as mothers, that we can put the same thing in to 2 or 3 kids and not the same thing comes out. So we by nature have much larger compassion for people who are different because we see it, we're different from our sisters. So it's a much larger concept for women because we live it every single day. And empowerment is because of that, we understand that everybody's different. And they need to be empowered in their own way. So the mother will encourage the shy child a different way, and the mother will encourage the loud child, to be, or the daring child to be more careful. So they get empowered in their own ways, but in a different way. And then the uniqueness is that we naturally understand that everybody is unique. Mm-hmm. And I think that really factors into a female leadership style, very powerful in a team, because we, again, it's always about when we combine both. When we combine both, then we have everything. If we only have half, we only have half. If we only have the other half, it's only half. It's all about what do we need to do to connect it.
Do you think that just as a kind of a yes, no, do you think there is the ability for a lot of leaders to combine the best of male leadership direction and the best of female leadership direction?
Yes, actually, I have this, sort of the big idea and part of how we approach our leadership training is that we identify the leadership attributes that a team or a company is leading by. And then the only caveat is the leadership attribute have to range from female-centric to male-centric. So there's an actual agenda that says, okay, what do you define as a female leadership skill? What do you find as a male leadership skill? And then once we've defined the scale of leadership attributes for this team or the company, we remove the tag.
Okay.
And then the leader can go in and say, well, I'm selecting 3 leadership attributes from the scale of 10, and they could be female or they could be male, or perceived male or female. And that really changes the dynamic dramatically, because now leaders can really lead by their natural attributes versus what they're assimilating from their external environment.
Is this what you call then balanced leadership in the book that you got?
Yes, exactly. So that's exactly the idea of balanced leadership. It's not just about getting women into leadership positions, but it's also about showing men that there are real values in female-centric attributes.
All right. Is that then part of the code as well? So what other small, I realize our time, but I'm not going to be topping on. We can continue on. We talked about that. But what is the code then? What would you say if you needed to try to express it within, say, about 3 sentences or so? What is the code that you're talking about?
Well, the code really is an understanding of us as human beings or as people, that we are comprised out of all kinds of different attributes. And in order to step into really a powerful leadership position, we have to develop all sides of ourselves. We see this, for example, in Myers-Briggs, where we know that sort of in midlife, people naturally develop the things that they have spent half of their life to develop, and now they're realizing there's another side to it that they still have to develop. So it really raises our own conscience about what there still is out there. So the code shows that there is no good or bad, but that there's a range, and that we want people to lead based upon their innate leadership skills and really promote those and make them the best leader at what they're at, instead of trying to have them develop into something that they're not.
So does this fit in to some extent? How, or should I express it a different way here? How does this fit into maybe the authentic leadership that seems to be very popular at this time period?
Yes, it is. But I believe that I'm so far the only person or the only system that I know of, and maybe I'm deluded, is that it really pays a lot more attention to what female leadership actually is. I find that everything else just finds sort of an umbrella and tries to put people sort of in this authentic leadership. But without female leadership actually being defined, we cannot promote women. We cannot identify on whether it is a good leader, because we have no criteria, we have no baseline. So the Women's Code is really designed to establish the baseline of women leadership, and then to put it in relationship with male leadership so that they can seamlessly merge. And then, we can say, well, I have compassion as a man, and I'm a better leader because I have that. And now it's a leadership attribute because we've defined that it is one.
There was someone a while back that I was talking with, and not in an interview so much, but I was talking with them, and they talked about putting together, no, it was an interview, it was Dr. Winston from Regent University, and he said that he and another professor that he knew put together a bunch of studies together to find out how many different words describe leadership. And they said there was around 90 some that they've run into, and now he wants to do another study to see if there's an expansion of that. It sounds like you're trying to add to that because you're looking at a female scale more so than the male scale. Does that seem to be true? And
yeah, Yes, I think you sort of nailed it. I'm not necessarily. I actually like the idea of saying, there's a whole bunch of things that could be leadership, because right now, a lot of times, and I know, because I work with men, and I love men and I appreciate men, is that men also suffer from the perceived leadership of having to be decisive and having to be go-getters and having to be extroverted, because not all male leaders are like that. So we want to open this by the example of, the Women's Code, and just say, hey, listen, if you're a man, there's a lot in there that you can also apply. And that's always what happens. And the men come and says, like, I thought this was for women, but this really applies to me too. And I'm like, well, that's the whole point. Is to open it up and say, look, there's a whole other world that's actually not contrary to what men already believe in, but complementary.
Yeah, so do you think that the combination, there's been also some studies recently about women suffering a lot of the kind of physical aspects or mental aspects as well, that men have suffered for so many years as being leaders and I'll say managers as well, and throw those together, even though I know that those two things are somewhat different. Do you think that looking at a difference in this female aspect and male aspect, merging them together, may give better physical and mental attributes to both sets of people?
I think it'll actually reduce anxiety and it increases engagement. And here's why. Because if I am not seen for who I truly am, if I work and you are telling me that every time I meet you for a quarterly review, all the things I still need to improve, that's demoralizing, that's putting me down. It constantly puts out, focuses on all the things that I'm not good at. How can I want to give you everything that I am if you constantly point out all the things that I'm not good at? So if we switch it around and we say, look, we're a team, and as long as all the attributes we as a team identified we need to have on this team, we really don't care in what kind of packages they come. You could have only 2, you could have 4. As long as we have all these different aspects that we've identified that are important, everybody gets to bring in 100%. And then in my review, suddenly I can articulate that these are the attributes I choose to lead or contribute by. And now you can judge me actually on the contributions that we've identified on a baseline. You see what I mean? So how can I now be anxious? Because now we talk in the same language. Now we have a different, meaningful conversation. And I think that in the leadership selection of how you bring in team members and how you're getting supported by your team members as a leader, a manager, director, vice president, C-level executive, is a whole different story, because now people have actually verbiage to articulate what the contribution is.
And that verbiage is always important. I mean, every style of, or every kind of say job or situation that has anything to do with some kind of a group of people usually create their own language first. And that language is important for them to know. I guess it used to be like the secret handshake, who's part of the same situation you are. How do you think that this fits in then to go back to authentic leadership a little bit, and also leadership based upon, what is the term I'm looking for? Based upon the situation that you're in, situational leadership. That just runs through you. But situational leadership, how would this impact that, you might say?
I think that with any style of leadership, it all comes down to your ability to react on your feet, and to kind of like find the right words to encourage your people through every situation, and to communicate clearly what's going on. So if the baseline, and I always go back to that, because as a woman leader, I know there's no baseline for women leadership. Mm-hmm. So if there is no baseline for women leadership, and women are on your team, and most teams have women, better be having teams, women on your team, that means that there's always going to be a lack. So I believe that establishing this baseline really changes everything on whether that's situational or authentic leadership. It helps people to express who they truly are in just a much stronger way. And I think it also reduces, Mel, it reduces the fear of being punished or making a mistake or being singled out for something that you missed, because you can now say, hey, those are the ones I picked, and I'm strong on these 3, and the other 3 or the other 6 are covered by other people. So it really encourages less the singling out and saying, like, you dropped the ball and you didn't do this, but to say, well, I contributed this. Was this enough? Do you need more from me? How does this fit in with your contributions? I think it helps leadership in general, because it's just communication improves.
Well, it seems to me like then that allows anyone to use their strengths at any point in time, and therefore everything is not situated for one person to be the all true leader.
It doesn't work anyway. We know that it doesn't work, and we have in our careers, everybody has had this leader, and we just have to turn on the news and we see plenty of them, right? And they go like, I know everything and I'm the end all be all. I have conversations with myself because I'm so smart. And what we do is we roll our eyes because we know it's not true. You can't know everything. A good leader is always a leader who says, I know what I'm good at, but I rely on my team and my people to bring the things to me that I'm not good at, because this is not, leadership is not mini-me cloning. Leadership is bringing people in that are specifically adding a skill set, and they better be better at that than you are, because then why be the leader if you can do everything yourself?
And also, why have those persons hired? If you can do those positions, it'd be better for you to do those positions in many cases.
Exactly. Then you shouldn't be the boss. Then you should be a minion who's doing like all these other things, right? But being the boss means more managing and leading people so that they can run at their highest capacity. And when they are running at their highest capacity, then the work result, the productivity, innovation, creativity is at its highest. We have all the numbers.
You mentioned it just a moment ago, and we had a question on the Leader Campus from a Dinah Maloney, and she talked about fear. How does fear fit into this balanced leadership or any kind of leadership?
So I'm so glad about this question, because it comes all the time. So there's fear and there's confidence, right? So if you feel fear, you can't really feel confident, or are you fearful because you're not feeling confident? So you really kind of don't know which one comes first and which one comes second. So my answer to that is very straightforward. We all feel fear. Every single person I know feels fear. And if they don't say they don't feel fear, then they have a personality disorder. They need to be diagnosed and they need to be on medication. Everybody feels fear. But fear you feel only when you're doing something that is outside of your comfort zone. In order to be a leader, you have to constantly step out of your comfort zone. Otherwise, you wouldn't be a leader. So therefore, you have to have a certain level of fearfulness all the time. I was just watching, I actually saw Laird Hamilton, the big surfer, big wave surfer. And this question came up for him too, and this guy goes like, 30, 40, 60 feet waves. And somebody says, well, do you have fear? And he just looked at the person and says, well, of course. You better have fear, because it keeps you sort of sharp. So fear is really a tool in our arsenal as leaders that we use for courage, because without fear, we don't need courage. So fear fosters courage. And we use fear as a tool to constantly keep us reminded that now we're taking a bigger, bolder step. We're moving in the right direction. If I'm in my house, if I'm doing the same thing every single day, I don't have to be fearful, because I know exactly what to expect. But the minute I leave my house, the minute I do something I haven't done before, there's an uncertain factor of it. So I think fear is a great recognition badge for leaders.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. There's another question, too, that I want to relate to you then from Dr. John Charney. And he said, is there any kind of topics that aren't being written about enough? And obviously, sounds like it's right up your lane.
Yeah, I do believe that what women leadership is really missing in the leadership conversation. And that's been something that I've been really raising the bar about. I think that the reason why we're not seeing the numbers change in women leadership is because we don't know what a woman leader is. And therefore, only women leaders that are relatable to male leaders are actually making it into the leadership, into real leadership positions. But we fail to recognize that there might be something that's specific to women because we're always so worried about being politically correct. So we're taking a patriarchal system and we're pushing everybody in it, no matter what color, no matter whatever. But, the system is built for white men. And then we take everybody else and we push them in the system that's created for white men that think and act a certain way. And then we're surprised that everybody else is failing. Mm. So within the system that we've created, the conversation we're not having is, does this system that's created for white men really work for everybody else? And if it doesn't, which it doesn't, then what do we need to change to allow additions? And it's not, I think the important part is that we're not going and saying it's wrong. But what we are saying now is that it's one aspect of a much larger a spectrum that we can add to that. We can add women leadership. We can add African-American leadership. We can add Asian leadership. We can add all kinds of different leaderships next to it. Why are we not having these conversations?
That certainly would have an impact on global leadership then as well. Mm-hmm. That would expand it a great deal. Mm-hmm. So let's hope that this conversation and this interview that you've done will spark some people into looking into women's leadership and any other type of leadership and expand the definition as such. So I want to give you a chance to plug your book and where can we pick it up at, and then we'll say goodnight. So
I know. Well, I know the time just goes. So my book is called Happy Woman, Happy World. So Happy Woman, Happy World is available as an audiobook, as an ebook, and as a printed book. You find it on Amazon. It's actually #1 international Amazon. I'm going to be just straightforward about it. A bestseller. And it is designed for women who are wanting to map out their career, but also want to have a life. It's called From Overwhelmed to Awesome. Men have read it and men have told me it's like the playbook of the other side or the other team. So it gives you some insights. So if you have some of these typical men-woman conversations, you might find it very helpful. And you can check out the Women's Code at thewomenscode.com. I have an insights paper that I wrote where I give a lot of the data about women leadership and sort of, the reality of how women are really faring in the corporate workplace, which you might find helpful. And you can also, of course, always connect with me directly by just using my initials, bc@beatechelette.com. I'm always open and always interested in talking to other people and learning more.
Well, I'm glad that you decided to talk with us. This has been a fantastic interview, and I thank you very much for joining us. It's Beate Chelette, right?
Beate Chelette. Right? Yeah,
Beate Chelette.
You're doing good.
Okay, thanks. Beate Chelette. And again, I want to thank you very much for your contribution, and I hope you will look at the Leader Campus and throw in some suggestions and discussions too, and participate on the campus.
Thank you so much. I will. It's been really a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.